Alright, what's going on, guys, and welcome back to the channel. So here on the channel, we've talked a lot about longevity and reliability of how to make your motor last longer. But what happens if you're one of the unfortunate few that actually has a motor explode, spin a bearing, or blow on you in general? Like, as you can see, I have no motor right now. What are your options and what can you actually do? So we're going to talk about that today. We're going to do it very informally. I really like doing these more informal discussion videos just to kind of help you guys out. You guys ask these questions a lot in DMs, live streams, and whatnot, so let's address them today. So if you are one of the unfortunate few that do lose a motor due to some type of issue, you have a couple options. A, you can go ahead and rebuild the motor. B, you can replace it with something aftermarket by some manufacturer. There's IAG, RevWorks, Crawford, a lot of people out there that build blocks. Or you can also pick up an OEM block, or you can do a JDM swap. Now let's start in the first topic of rebuilding your own block or having someone else rebuild your own block. Sometimes this can be the most cost-effective solution for whatever you're trying to do, but something you have to keep in mind is if your motor blows, what are you trying to achieve out of the car? Before you even pick a motor, before you even decide on what you're gonna do, you need to think to yourself, like, do you wanna make more power out of the car? Do you want the car to be able to hold more power? What do you want out of an engine, and what type of engine do you want? Now, if you are rebuilding your block, there's a couple things you have to keep in mind. Sometimes the block is salvageable, sometimes it's not. It all depends on what happens to the motor. If you completely just crack something in the case half is pretty much trash. If the heads are unserviceable and they can't be repaired, heads are pretty much trash. So you're looking at a long block at that point. Now, just to give some clarification here, the difference between a short block and a long block is a short block is just gonna be the case halves, which is gonna be your crank, rods, pistons, just the center portion of the engine. A long block is going to include the heads. Now, head work is where things start to it gets a lot more expensive doing head work. Now, typically, whenever you go to rebuild a motor, you have to send parts out to the machine shop. You have to get things resurfaced, you have to get things rehoned, you have to get things cleaned up. Now, if that is something that you have to do, keep in mind that machine shop costs are going to vary from shop to shop, but it's typically a lot cheaper to just rebuild a motor that is salvageable than it is to go out and just buy a brand new one. But that is if you are keeping it to certain specs. It can quickly get very expensive if you're rebuilding your own motor because parts skyrocket. You're like, well, since I'm doing this, since I'm doing rods, I might as well do pistons, might as well do crank, repolish, renitrate it, all this other stuff. So rebuilding your own block is a very good idea, but keep in mind that when you go to rebuild the block, you got to keep power numbers in mind for what you're kind of shooting for as an end goal. Now, after that, you have the ability, if you don't want to like rebuild your own block and you want to go a step farther and you want to just swap the motor with something else, you can definitely do that. There's a couple good options out there, especially for Subarus. Like I said, IAG, Crawford, RevWorks, all of these like really good engine builders out there that you can get to replace one of your blocks if it does blow up. But this option can also be fairly pricey. Now, if you are looking at swapping your motor and you want to stay like within a reasonable amount of power and you want to keep costs down, I do highly suggest the Type RA STI short block. People have been making like 500 plus on that block all day long. You are gonna have to do a little bit of head work to get it there, but for the most part, that short block is pretty strong. Now, in comparison, you can pick up like an STI Type RA short block for around $2,200-ish, brand new from Subaru or from some aftermarket companies out there who do stock them. Now, in comparison, like I said, people have been making 500 plus on these STI RA blocks. Now, you could get an IAG stage 1 block also, which is rated up to 500 wheel horsepower, but the other side of that is it's gonna cost you about $3,300. So keeping in mind, like you need to do a little bit of research when going into it, deciding if you want like whatever your power numbers are, like your power figures for what you're shooting for are going to dictate what motor you get and kind of what path you choose to be able to get to that motor. Now, if you are just looking for an easy swap to get the car running again, you can always just pick up a used EJ257, EJ255, 205, whatever block you're trying to replace in there. But this is where things get a little bit dicey because a lot of you guys ask me about JDM swaps, if you should do like an EJ207 or a JDM EJ205 in your car. Now, if you're looking to modify the car and you are putting in a JDM engine, here's the thing that you have to keep in mind is it's not going to be as easy as it is with a USDM engine. When you put a JDM motor in the car like an EJ207, you also have to use the ECU that goes with that car. When you're swapping in an EJ207 with a JDM ECU, typically you're gonna have to do open source tuning if you plan on modifying the car and making any type of power with it. So it's not always the easiest route to just buy a JDM engine, throw it in the car and go down your way, buy an access port and all that. It's typically off the table. You can't really do that because Cobb doesn't support JDM motors. But JDM motors are a very good option for those of you who just want to swap a motor in the car and drive it as is with very basic mods, or if you have access to someone who does open source tuning, it is a good option to be able to do that as well. Now, like I said, there's a couple different paths that you can go down when trying to figure out what you want to do with your blown motor. Sometimes people will take them as cores and they'll give you a small discount off of a built engine. Sometimes they can reuse those cores, but like I said, everything is going to revolve around the power figure that you're shooting for and the goal that you want out of the car. So when you guys ask me like, hey, my motor blew up, what motor do you suggest me using? It's really gonna revolve around like, what do you plan on doing with the car? You can also go like open deck, semi-closed deck, closed deck. There's a ton of options out there. I do really suggest you guys talk to like an engine builder if like making a lot of horsepower is something that you guys want to do, because they are going to give you the best recommendation for what you want out of the motor and how to get it built. But those are a few of the options. The direct motor drop-ins, like an EJ207, you can buy one. I think you can buy a complete EJ207 drop-in motor with intercooler, downpipes, ECU, wiring, all that. It's not cheap. I found one on eBay for around $4,000, $4,500. So that might not always be the cheapest option that you want to do, but your budget and power is going to dictate what you do. So, I mean, I hope this gives you guys a little bit of clarification. I didn't want to go way too deep into this one, but I did want to answer the question since it does come up all the time. So I hope it does help you guys. So if you liked the video, you know what to do. Go ahead, hit that like button and turn it blue like the Subaru. And if you're not already subscribed to the channel, hit your boy up. We got a lot of good stuff coming. Hopefully we get the motor back soon for this. Or, I mean, I guess another option if you really wanted to is a motor swap like I'm doing, but that's way more expensive. But anyways, I'll put it in one of these corners. If you guys aren't subscribed and you want to, go ahead and hit that button. And with that, I will catch you guys in the next one. Peace out, homies.